There is a magic in the mountains, a sacred silence in the deep woods that calls to something primal within us. We lace up our boots, shoulder our packs, and step onto the path seeking solace, adventure, or simply a break from the relentless noise of modern life. The forest welcomes us with its cathedral of trees, its carpets of moss, and the promise of vistas that steal the breath. We follow the blazes on the trees, the well-worn dirt under our feet, trusting in the map and our own preparedness. But the wilderness is not a park. It is an ancient, breathing entity, indifferent to our presence. It holds secrets in its shadows and echoes of things that were never meant to be seen by human eyes. The trail is a fragile thread through an immense and unknowable darkness, and sometimes that thread snaps. These are not just campfire tales. They are accounts from those who walked into the green and stumbled into the abyss that lies just beyond the edge of the path. Story 1. The Man on the Ridge. Sarah and Ben were not casual hikers. They were seasoned backpackers, their gear worn and trusted, their skills honed by countless miles in the backcountry. Their chosen route was the Serpent's Pass, a grueling week-long traverse through one of the largest and most remote wilderness areas in the lower 48. For the first 2 days, it was paradise. The weather was perfect, the wildlife was abundant, and they felt the profound joy of absolute solitude. On the third afternoon, they descended into a vast, U-shaped valley known as Silent Hollow. The name came from its strange acoustic properties. Sound seemed to be swallowed by the dense fir forests and the sheer granite walls. As they began to set up camp by a meandering, ice-cold creek, Sarah stretched her sore muscles and gazed across the valley. That's when she saw him, a man, standing on the highest point of the opposite ridge, a stark silhouette against the blood-orange disk of the setting sun. He was tall and unnaturally still. "Ben, look, another hiker," she said, pointing. Ben squinted. "Weird place to stop. Must be a hell of a view." He gave a friendly, exaggerated wave. The figure did not respond. He didn't move a muscle. A faint prickle of unease touched the back of Sarah's neck. They continued setting up their tent, but every few minutes, one of them would glance up. The man was a constant, a statue on the skyline. As twilight deepened, his details vanished, leaving only a tall, black cutout against the indigo sky. But the feeling of being watched did not vanish. It intensified. That night, cocooned in their tent, the silence of the hollow became oppressive. It was then they heard it. A voice. It was faint, carried on a wind that shouldn't have been able to carry sound so clearly. It was mimicking Ben. "The bear bag is secure. I double-checked the knot," the voice said, a flat, emotionless replica of his words from just an hour before. Sarah gripped Ben's arm, her nails digging into his skin. They lay frozen. Then it mimicked Sarah. "My feet are killing me. I hope the pass isn't as bad as the book said." The voice replayed snippets of their private conversations with a parasite's accuracy. It wasn't just repeating words, it was copying their cadence, their slight laughs, their sighs. It was a sound that shouldn't exist, a violation of the wilderness's sacred silence. The mimicry continued, on and off, for what felt like hours. A spectral ear pressed against their camp, learning their sounds. They didn't sleep. At first light, they broke camp in a frenzied, silent hurry. They didn't eat breakfast. They just packed and started hiking, pushing a brutal pace up the far side of the valley, desperate to put the ridge and its silent occupant behind them. They hiked until their legs trembled, finally collapsing in a small, sheltered grove of aspens as dusk began to bleed into the sky again. They were exhausted, but the memory of the voice spurred them to set up the tent once more. Just as Ben zipped the fly shut, he peered out through the mesh window to check the weather. His blood turned to ice. There, on a ridge directly above their new camp, no more than 200 yards away, was the same tall, motionless figure. He was closer now. Close enough that Ben could see the dark hollows where his eyes should be. And from the tree line, just beyond the ring of light from their headlamps, the mimicry began again. This time, it was loud and clear, without the need for wind. "We have to get out of here," it whispered, in a perfect, terrified copy of Sarah's voice from that morning. Story 2. The Cairns That Led Nowhere. My name is Alex. I consider myself an expert navigator. I've hiked the highest peaks and the deepest canyons, always with a map, a compass, and a healthy respect for the wild. My hubris led me to the Devil's Backbone, a notorious, sparsely marked ridge trail known for its sheer drops and its tendency to swallow the unprepared. The first day was a brutal, exhilarating climb. The views were indeed spectacular, but an unsettling feeling began to creep in. The forest felt old, resentful. On the second day, I reached a confusing section where the trail seemed to fork in 3 directions, none of which matched my topographical map. Frustration mounted. Then I saw it. A small, expertly stacked cairn perched on a boulder, pointing to the left-hand fork. Relief washed over me. Thank God, I thought. Other hikers. I took the left fork. The trail was faint, overgrown with thorny bushes that snagged my pack. But every time doubt crept in, another cairn would appear. A small, deliberate pile of stones, a silent guide urging me onward. I trusted them completely. It was the biggest mistake of my life. After an hour of difficult hiking, I stopped. The forest had changed. The light was dim, filtered through a thick, sickly-looking canopy. The birdsong had ceased. The air was cold and dead still. I pulled out my GPS unit. The screen was a chaotic mess of static. My phone showed no service. A cold knot of panic tightened in my stomach. I decided to retreat. But when I turned to go back the way I came, the path was gone, utterly gone. In its place was a nearly vertical slope of loose scree and dense, snarled undergrowth that would have been impossible to climb through. It was as if the forest had rearranged itself behind me. My heart hammered against my ribs. That's when I saw the first cairn again. But it was different. The stones had been deliberately rearranged into a crude, humanoid shape, with a larger, flatter rock balanced on top like a head. And it was no longer pointing the way I had come. It was pointing off the trail, into the heart of the darkest part of the woods. Terror took over. I abandoned the path and ran, crashing through ferns and over fallen logs, branches whipping at my face. I didn't care about direction. I just needed to get away from those stones. I burst, gasping, into a small, rocky clearing, and my legs gave way beneath me. The clearing was a gallery of horrors. It was filled with dozens of cairns, but they were not trail markers. They were effigies. Twisted, skeletal forms made of stone, woven with moss, vines, and I swear to you, small white animal bones. Some were tall and thin, others short and squat. They were all arranged in a spiral pattern, all pointing their stony heads toward the center of the clearing. And in the center sat the largest cairn of all. It was shaped like a crude throne, and placed neatly on its seat was my own bright blue Nalgene water bottle, which I had lost from my pack's side pocket hours and miles earlier. A sound began then, a low, grinding vibration that seemed to come from the very rocks beneath my feet. It wasn't a voice, but it formed words in my mind, a sensation of meaning being pressed directly into my consciousness. You followed the invitation. Now you will stay. You will become a marker for the next one who is lost. I don't remember how I escaped. I remember screaming and launching myself back into the trees, falling, tumbling, rolling down a steep embankment until I landed, battered and bleeding, on the gravel of a well-maintained fire road. A park ranger found me an hour later, curled in a fetal position, unable to speak coherently. When I could finally tell my story, the ranger's face was grim. "There are no maintained cairns on the Devil's Backbone," he said. "We actively dismantle them, because we find them. Like you described, we call them witch stones. They don't lead to water or safety. They lead to it. Whatever it is." Story 3, The Third Hiker. Mark and Chloe loved the Lakeside Loop. It was their trail, a popular, well-marked 10-mile circuit around a beautiful alpine lake, busy enough to feel safe but long enough to offer solitude. It was a perfect Saturday, and they started early, the morning sun dappling the path through the fragrant pines. About a mile in, they came upon a slower hiker, a man in a dark evergreen jacket and a wide-brimmed brown leather hat. He was just standing on the side of the trail, looking down at the lake, his hands in his pockets. As they passed, they offered a cheerful "good morning." He didn't turn or speak, but gave a single, slow nod without making eye contact. A little while later, they stopped at a scenic waterfall to take photos. The man in the green jacket walked past them, again with that same silent nod. They thought it was a little odd, but shrugged it off. Some people just aren't social. But as the morning wore on, they kept seeing him. He was never hiking with them, but he was always there. If they sped up, he was just ahead, walking at a steady, unchanging pace. If they slowed to admire a view, He would stop 100 yards down the trail and stand perfectly still, his back to them, as if waiting. "Okay, this is getting creepy," Chloe whispered to Mark during a water break. The man had once again stopped up ahead. "Let's just let him get way ahead," Mark suggested. They sat on a log for a full 20 minutes until the man was long out of sight. But when they started hiking again, they rounded a bend and there he was, standing in the middle of the trail, as if he had been waiting for them the entire time. He didn't turn, but he began walking the moment they appeared. Now truly frightened, they decided to get off the main trail. They knew of a steep, unmarked fisherman's path that cut down to the lake shore, which would allow them to bypass a long section of the loop and get back to the trailhead faster. It was a difficult, scrabbling descent, but they felt a wave of relief as they left the main path behind. After 20 minutes of bushwhacking, they stopped by the water's edge, hidden by a thick stand of cedars, their hearts pounding from the exertion and fear. "Did we lose him?" Chloe panted. Mark looked back up the steep wooded slope toward the main trail, now several hundred feet above them. His blood ran cold. The man in the green jacket was there, standing on the very edge of the ridge, looking directly down at their hiding spot. How could he have known? How could he have followed them down that near vertical, hidden path? They ran. They abandoned all pretense, crashing through the shoreline brush, their only goal to get to the public beach at the far end of the lake. They finally stumbled out of the woods onto the paved park road, their clothes torn, their faces scratched, gasping like landed fish. A family loading a minivan saw their distress and without question offered them a ride to the ranger station. As the minivan pulled away, Chloe, trembling, looked out the back window. The man in the green jacket was standing at the exact spot where they had emerged from the forest. He wasn't running. He wasn't even looking surprised. He was just watching the van depart. And as they turned the corner, he slowly, deliberately raised his hand and waved goodbye. At the ranger station, a seasoned ranger named Evans listened to their frantic story. When they described the green jacket and the leather hat, his expression changed from concern to a deep, weary solemnity. He motioned for them to follow him to a back office. From a filing cabinet, he pulled out an old faded manila folder. Inside was a black and white photograph of a young man, smiling, dressed in hiking gear from the 1970s. He was wearing a dark green jacket and a wide-brimmed brown leather hat. "That's him," Mark whispered, his voice hollow. Ranger Evans nodded. "His name was David. He vanished on the lakeside loop in 1978. We searched for weeks, never found a trace, but over the years we get reports. Always the same description. He never speaks, he never threatens, he just joins hikers. He seems to want to finish his hike." The ranger closed the folder. "You didn't see a ghost, you saw an echo. A moment in time that's forever stuck on that trail. You're safe now. He can't leave the woods. 3 trails, 3 violations of the natural order. A mimic that learns your voice, a labyrinth of sentient stone, and an echo of a tragedy forever repeating itself. They are a stark reminder that the wilderness is not ours. We are visitors, passing through a realm that is ancient, powerful, and deeply strange. The paths we walk are a fragile concession, so respect the silence, question the markers, and if you ever feel a presence behind you, a pair of eyes on your back, don't stop, don't look back. Just keep walking, and pray that whatever shares the trail with you is satisfied with just watching. Because in the deep, quiet woods, you are not the hunter. You are not even a guest. You are simply passing through.